All right, welcome back to our Clemson's Finest series. I think everybody doesn't need an introduction from this gentleman over here, but CJ Spiller, nice enough to come join us today and go back down memory lane with us a little bit and talk about what he's doing all across the board. We're going to have several segments of this for you, CJ. I'm the recruiting guy, so Will, I thought it was dangerous to let Will do this segment. So we're going to go back a little bit to time before Clemson.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about what got you here. And let's start off by talking about, obviously I know Dabo was a big reason you came to Clemson.
Right.
Talk a little bit to me about, the first interactions you had with Clemson. I know the big thing was trying to get you on campus. But talk about how the relationship started.
Well, it first started, I had a high school teammate, Kevin Alexander, who obviously came here the same year that I did. He had already committed to Clemson. And I didn't know much about Clemson. I knew of Clemson just because I grew up a Florida State fan, and obviously those two teams playing each other every year. So I kind of knew the team, but didn't know in depth about what the program was all about. So every time Coach Sweeney always came down to see Kevin, I used to always see him like in our football building. And just happened one day, I was just walking through, and he kind of just asked me who my name was. Well, I want to introduce myself to him and told him who I was or whatever. And he kind of said, I know who you are, his typical fashion. Right. And then I think the conversation just started from there. It was just a little, how you doing, where you at in recruiting process, and, how your grades, how your family. So it was just kind of a bunch of small talk, and it kind of just went from there. And really, he'll come back. He kept coming back, and I only had 4 schools so far solid that I was going to visit. So I only had 1 visit remaining. And ironically, it came down between Clemson and Alabama. And he just said, what would it take to get you on our campus? And I said, well, it'll take, because I kind of did my research on him. I said, well, it'll take your alma mater not to recruit me. And they didn't recruit me as hard as he was. And, I agreed to come up here on a visit.
So Alabama actually helped Clemson out a little bit.
They actually helped us out. We win again.
Obviously, at that point, Dabo was not the head coach. He
was,
receiver coach. What made you, obviously, other than the Bama thing, what gave you the interest to go take that visit to Clemson?
When you sit down and you just talk to him, like you say, obviously at the time he was just the receivers coach and I believe the recruiting coordinator for Clemson. And when you sit down and just talk to him, you can kind of just see that he's very genuine. There's no phony with him. He was really, honestly, he was straight up. He was up front with me. He was like, if you just come on a visit, just see the campus for itself. If you like it, I'll continue to recruit you. If you don't like it, you just let me know, and I'll stop recruiting and I'll spend my time with someone else. And, he was probably the only recruiter that ever said that. You don't really hear that out of recruiters that, hey, if you don't like it, I'm going to just stop recruiting you. I'm going to, let you go about your business. So once he said that, I knew he was serious about the place where he worked at. He had a lot of confidence in his campus. And, so I just prayed on it, and the Lord led me to make my final decision to come to Clemson on a visit.
All right, let's take you to that visit. Obviously, a lot of hype around. Is he coming? Is he on campus? I remember tracking all that stuff. And so you get to Clemson after all that hype Dabo told you, and walk through, your thoughts when you get there and you take that visit.
Honestly, I believe I was just having a conversation with Miss Jill, I think a couple of weeks ago, and I was trying to get the timeline right because I thought that was on Martin Luther King, because there wasn't no school when I came on my visit. But she said it was out actually spring break for Clemson when I came. So Jacoby Ford and James Davis, they stayed back and hosted me on my visit. And I thought that was very unique because here you have a campus that's out of school. These guys had the opportunity to go home and be with their families or go wherever they want to be with their friends. And they decided to stay back and host a guy like me from a small town, but obviously coming in with a lot of accolades or whatever the case may be. And they decided to take some time out and just hang out with me. And to me, that meant the world to me. And honestly, I've told the story 1,000 times. Like, this was the only visit that I called back home and told my mom, hey, I think I can come here and play for 3 or 4 years. And I had already been to USC, which is Southern Cal.
The real USC.
The real USC. I went to Florida State. Obviously, I had went down to Miami, and I was actually I had just finished up my official visit with Florida. So obviously all that
Everybody
pressure.
thought you were going to Florida.
Yeah, exactly. So coming up here, they was nervous because they was like, "Hey, you gonna be able to catch your flight?" Because they had kind of somehow they caught in wind that Florida was trying to make me stay, so I missed my flight to get up here. But like I said, when I came up here and I kind of looked out that my hotel window and seen them beautiful mountains up there, I really called my mom and said, "This was a place I think I can come and play for 3 or 4 years." And I had never been that. And people always tell you during the recruiting process is that you'll know when you know. Like you'll know the perfect spot for you. And I think honestly that was really the point where I knew that Clemson was the place for me.
All right, so obviously you didn't let the world know then.
Right.
We talked about when you did let Dabo know, hey, I'm actually going to come to Clemson.
Yeah, I think it was the week before the head coach can come on his last home and visit. And I had told him, I said, hey, he was walking out the door, and I said, I think I'm gonna go ahead and commit and come to Clemson. And he was like, "You sure?" He was like, "Because I mean, he was trying to get me not to do it." He was like, "Are you probably?" I'm 99% sure. He was like, "Well, the head coach he got his last week of visit. Next week, I think he can get that 1% to make it 100%." So they came for their home visit, and we sitting there in the living room, and the coach is doing their spiel, and that's when I kind of got my first Coach Bowden. He's sitting on the couch, I'm sitting in the recliner. It's a sheet of paper on my mom, a little stand in the living room, and he gets there and he draws up a play, and he's like, "This is gonna be your play, the first play of the game." I said, "Okay, that's pretty cool." And so they sitting there waiting, like, "Okay, are you gonna do it?" But my mom was there, and then obviously everybody knows I kind of wanted to surprise her. So as they leaving, Coach, as I get outside, Coach put me in like, "Hey, I thought you were gonna come in." I was like, "I am gonna do it, but I want to surprise my mom." So he was sweating bullets, thinking that I had to change my mind because he got the head coach here and kind of told the head coach, "Hey, he's 99%. All you have to go in there and do is get 1%." And so I kind of told him that spiel that I wanted to surprise my mom on signing day, and so I just wanted to make him sweat a little more.
And they did.
Yeah, I just wanted to make them sweat just a little more.
Well, we'll get to signing day announcement here in a minute, but obviously you had a lot of pressure to stay home.
Yeah.
And just talk a little bit about that pressure you had.
Well, obviously, I mean, where I'm from in Union County, I tell people all the time, either you're a Florida State fan or you're a Florida fan. I mean, there's no other two. I mean, because for 1 year, I live 20, 30 minutes from the University of Florida, and then I'm like an hour and a half from Florida State University. So you one or two, and obviously I grew up a huge Florida State fan just because of Ward Dunn and just loving their colors and loving they fight song, and then it kind of gave me a good rivalry with my late grandmother, Nettie Pearl, because she was a huge Florida Gator fan. So we kind of had that little thing going on in the house. So it was a lot of pressure. And then the time I was coming out of high school, it was the first year that Coach Meyer was going to Florida. So he had all the big recruits coming in. He had Tim Tebow was already on campus. He had Brendan Spikes, Percy Harvin. So they had a very great class to kind of get that thing back to what they was trying to do over at Florida. And then obviously with me always going to the Florida State games, just my love for that program, and then obviously the legendary coach and Coach Bobby Bowden. I mean, have a chance to play for somebody like that. I mean, that was all on the table. But at the end of the day, I really just had to block all that stuff out. I had to take all my feelings out, the love that I had for both universities, and just really figure out what's the best situation for CJ Spiller for the next 3 to 4 years of his life. And once I weighed out all the options, I just figured, Clemson, even though it wasn't the sexiest choice at the time for a lot of people, I just figured it was the best decision that I could have made for myself because, for one, I wanted to go away, but I didn't want to go away too far. And honestly, it was like, okay, Miami is only like 5.5 hours from my hometown. And I was like, well, Clemson only like 5.5 hours from my hometown. So I'm like, okay, that way out each other. So I'm like, so I can go to Clemson and it'd be pretty much the same thing if I was to go to Miami. My family would still be able to drive up to game. So once I did all that and waited out and prayed on it, it was Clemson kind of was really the last team standing.
All right, let's go to that big announcement, signing day. Whole world's watching.
Yeah.
Mama doesn't know yet.
Mama don't know at all.
You're getting ready to go make that announcement.
Yes.
You have a little conversation, I think, with Mama before you go up there.
Yeah.
What do you tell Mom before you go up to let the world know?
Well, I mean, we were just sitting there in the gymnasium, and we just everybody doing this spiel, and my high school coach Buddy knows he kind of wanted everybody to kind of go before me because we wanted it to not we didn't want that signing day just to be about CJ. We had a bunch of other guys that was signing, so we wanted everybody to get the same amount of love. I'm just sitting there and we just doing some small talk, and right before I go up, I kind of say I'm going to Clemson. She was a huge Florida fan, and rightfully so. Coach Meyer had came in and did his sweet talk to her, and obviously being a mom, she wanted me to be close to home. She wasn't sure about Clemson. She didn't know. She had never been to Clemson. Obviously she had to have been to Florida State with me. She didn't go to Miami or Southern Cal, but she had to have been to Florida with me. So she kind of knew what those two programs was about between Florida State and Florida. She didn't have no idea about Clemson. All she knew was he say from what the coaches told her. And so that kind of made her angry. And so I went up there and did my spiel. And once I announced it, and it was like a pin drop in there. Everything just went completely silent because, like I say, you either Florida State or you're a Gator fan, and you going up and seeing all the signs. Florida State, the next Florida State player, the next Florida player, going to having a chance to go join Tebow, and you have two local guys on the same team, can bringing a bigger crowd to games. So it was a lot of pressure, but I knew I had to do what was best for me. And if you really go back and watch that tape of me signing, like you can see my mom, she's really angry when I happened to sign the letter of intent. And the biggest thing for the coaches up here was making sure that
get that package
to the fax machine. Don't let nobody interfere with how that package is going to get delivered to our secretary at our school to make sure she faxed that letter of intent off.
Dabo likes to go back to that day being one of the things that helped change the program, and he talks about the character you had to have to stand up in front of all those people down there in Florida and say, guys, I'm leaving the state. How hard was that?
It was tremendous hard. I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't hard because, like I said, it's my lifelong love for Florida State and, and then obviously being, 20, 25 minutes from the University of Florida and obviously having a chance to play with Tim Tebow because, I had got to know him throughout our high school career. We played against each other in the spring game, so I kind of got a chance to know him and his family. And, I actually went to his one of his playoff games when they played a team that we had played early in the year. And so we kind of had that bond, and so it was a thing that, hey, man, let's play together. We had to talk about it, hey, I knew he was going to Florida, like, hey, you gonna come join me over there? So it was like, I got to tell one of my friends that, hey, I'm deciding not to come to Florida, and I'm gonna go to Clemson. And like I said, it wasn't the sexiest choice, so they're like, what is Clemson? But like I said, I knew I had to do what was best for me, and them guys obviously did what was best for them. But it was hard, but it was something. I think to me, it was another stepping stone for my growth as a person, as a man. And it was one of those big decisions that you take advice from everybody, but at the end of the day, I wanted to make the decision.
All right, we'll finish this segment up with this last question. Coaches were nervous.
Yeah.
You had told them you were going to come, but you hadn't signed, you hadn't announced.
Right.
What was, talk about the conversations you had once you did, with Dabo, and once it was over, the relief you got back from them?
I think it was a big relief from them guys. I can hear it in their voice. I had, called them once I got out the gym, and, I kind of talked to all the coaches, and, to me, I think I ain't gonna say his reputation was on the line, but, he did. Some people in the organization didn't believe that he can deliver a 5-star guy because I can't remember the last time one had that came or he had to sign one. So it was a lot of we not sure. Are you sure he's gonna come? But to me, my grandmother always told me, always be a man of your word. Once you tell somebody you're doing something, you do it. And I had to told him that I was coming, and I wasn't gonna sit there and trick him and be like, oh no, I changed my mind at the last second and decided to go somewhere, because that's not how I wanted. even if I didn't come to Clemson, I still wanted that relationship to be there. So you know, like I said, they was nervous, but I mean, it was a big relief for me. It really was. I can remember going back and my high school coach showing me a 7-on-7 picture where I'm just sitting. I think we were going against Lake City, Columbia High School over in Lake City, and I'm just kind of sitting on the hill, like with my head down, and he kind of knew that it was starting to get to me. And that was one of the things that he always told me before it started, like never let it get to you that much where it's gonna stress you out. And I ain't gonna say it stressed me out so much. It was just everything that was coming with it, with with the pressure of trying to, do I stay home? Do I go off? What schools are really, trying to get my best interest, or what school is really just trying to just have me come just be another guy on their just to be another commitment to their class. So it was just a lot that was just going through my head, and I just remember him showing me that picture, and I said, it's time for me just to have fun with this process.
CJ Spiller, that's the day Dabo's rise started. Wasn't head coach yet, but I think a lot of people point back to that day when CJ stood up there in Florida and told the world he was coming to Clemson, the day that kind of put Clemson on the trajectory that ended with 2 of 3 national championships. We got a lot more coming your way. Thanks, CJ, for joining us for this segment of Clemson's Finest.